What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Florida Prison Talk. I'm your host, Easy Win, and for this one right here, we got my man, Mr. Robert Lefleur. Introduce yourself, Mr. Robert.
Hello, everyone. My name's Robert Lefleur, and I'm here today to get interviewed.
All right. And we're going to get, without no further ado, we're going to get right into it. What led you to your journey? What crime did you commit, Rob, to get 31 years in the Florida Department of Corrections? You was young, too.
Yeah, I was 16, and I committed a absolutely senseless murder and attempted murder, and that's what led to my incarceration. I was sentenced to life. I was found guilty at trial. I was sentenced to life, and proceeded to do over 31 years in prison before I was resentenced, pursuant to the new juvenile laws, which have since been rescinded in the state of Florida, an act of grave injustice. So I was one of the fortunate juvenile offenders who was resentenced during the window of opportunity. And that's how I got to be here.
Wow. Okay. And was you before you caught this case, did you have a troubled childhood? Was you already getting in trouble juvenile?
Yeah, I've been arrested several times. I mean, I guess you could say I had all the chances to straighten out. And I can only speak for myself. And as that, I can speak for other guys who have experienced, the same thing. And, when you're young and dumb and feel like, you can change the world or be unaffected by it, you get arrested and you get a slap on the wrist and you think, oh man, this shit is great. This is like almost free lunch, you know what I mean? And you just keep on and you keep on and, you do more and more severe crimes, more serious offenses. And before you know it, you done killed somebody and you're facing a whole bunch of time.
Wow. And how about your parents? Was your father and your parents was around? You had both your parents in the household?
No. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old. And I know there's a lot of statistics that go one way or the other. And I apologize for moving around. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old. And I know there's a lot of data, a lot of information that goes one way or the other. And there are a lot of people who will use that as a cop-out. But a lot of guys had rough childhoods. A lot of people went through divorce, and those guys never committed a murder. There's a lot of guys who go through that. And yeah, there are a lot of decisions that I should have made differently, and there's a lot of things that I should have done differently. And the truth is, man, I just didn't have the tools. I just didn't have the resources available, and I thought, like every young, stupid teenager, I thought I was making all the right decisions for me, you know what I mean? And and that just doesn't lead that way.
So when you got sentenced to life, did you take it to trial? Did they offer you a plea?
Well, the plea that I was offered was one of those so they could say they did it plea agreements, like it was the 11th hour. Trial started on Monday, Friday at 6:30. They offered, I faced the death penalty, and pretty much the judge, in a token gesture, he demanded, air quote, demanded that they make a plea agreement, or at least an offer, because he refused to try a death penalty case without at least giving me a chance to plead. So they came and they said, you can plead guilty to life with a mandatory 25 and you can be out at 10. So I said, if they put that on paper, I'll take it. And of course they weren't going to put anything on paper about getting out after 10 years. So, I went to trial,
Okay.
And I had no factual or even realistic chance of beating the charge at trial, but I was just refusing to just take a life sentence, because I was young and hard-headed, so I just refused.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were you pre-trial during all this? Were you pre-trial confinement?
I was locked up. Yeah, I was locked up. Like 326 days or something before trial. You know,
Okay.
I got locked up February 2nd, got sentenced on December 9th of 88, ended up in Florida prison system December 21st. You know, so
okay. So what was the first compound you hit in the Florida Department of Corrections?
I went to Henry Correctional Institution, located down off of, well, it no longer exists. It was closed and torn down, but it was located mostly close to Fort Myers off of Alligator Alley. It was right outside of Immokalee.
Okay. Yeah. And you were 17. So was you with adults?
Yeah. Yeah. When I went, there were some juvenile prisons, and I guess you could say I was overqualified to be there because of my charge. So they put me in with the grown-ups. There was about 850 inmates at Henry at the time, and like 3 of us were under 21 and maybe 2 under 18. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I asked that question. Okay, because I'm hearing a lot of different things from different prison channels, and this question I'm about to ask you right now is a question that I'm guaranteeing that the subscribers and the viewers want to also know. And my question is, how was it back then for a white boy in the Florida Department of Corrections? I'm hearing that the blacks were putting down, it was extortion. And how was it coming right from the horse's mouth?
This is how it is, right? Okay, when I fell during the era of prison at that time, almost everything was racially segregated by choice of the inmates, you know? And even though there was always that underlying tension, the most important thing was to just, you know, be yourself, you know what I'm saying? Have some heart, you know what I'm saying? Because even if you were a little guy back then, and I was a little guy, I was 5'6", weighed like 140 pounds, you know, there were going to be guys, it doesn't matter, white guys, black guys, Spanish guys, men, you know, who were, if you were going to stand up for yourself, they were going to make sure you got a fair shot.
Okay.
You know, so, and if you weren't going to stand up for yourself, then I guess you still got what was considered a fair shot. You just got treated the way a coward would be treated, you know. But if you were going to represent yourself, a dude was going to say, hey, man, you know, handle that one-on-one or handle that the right way, you know. That was just the way it was, you know. And prison was self-governed a lot back then. I mean, to the point where the sergeants would come out of the officer station and say to the dudes who've been in the dorm the longest, hey, man, you know, what the fuck is going on here? Y'all need to tighten this shit up. Okay. Or I'm going to have to, you know, I'm going to have to. And, you know, nobody wanted to go to jail. So at that point, you know, dudes would say, hey, man, listen, if you don't tighten up, man, that cop's coming out here locking somebody's stupid ass up. You know, so.
Okay, and so you got to Henry, that was your first institution.
Yes.
When you got to Henry, you were so young and small and stuff. Do you remember your first confrontation you got into with another inmate? How long did that take before you got?
That took about maybe 3 or 4 days, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe 3 or 4 days. Yeah, it was about a hat. It was about a state hat.
Okay, can you talk about it?
That's what it was about. Well, I mean, you know, I took the hat off my bed, and I came back, and I'm looking around for the hat, and he's over there. I mean, I got the hat. What's up? You know, and you know, and that was pretty much it. You know, that was how it started.
And okay, and going back, because I'm gonna go into the other stuff at the end, but I got to get this part out the way. In the Florida, you fell in 88.
Yep.
And you was there from 88, you 31 years to 2019. So I know you've seen a bunch of transitions.
Right.
When you first went to 88.
Okay, but I left the DOC custody in January of 2017 and spent almost 3 years in the Broward County Jail appealing the juvenile issue.
Okay.
So, you know.
Okay, I got you. So, okay, so you got there in 88. Explain to the viewer the gang situation when you first got in, then when you was getting out. How was it? Was it any gangs when you first went in?
Okay. Now, when I first went in, there were some guys. I mean, because there were always some Latin kings, that you knew about. And they really didn't raise too much hell because back then, dudes who were not in a gang would pretty much band together and say, hey, man, we ain't having none of that gang shit here. Ain't nobody putting down. You know what I mean? And so they kind of like, it was quiet as it's kept. You know what I'm saying? And they probably would hate to admit that. But, the numbers speak for themselves. They were, as the oxymoron goes, they were a vast minority.
Okay.
And then I would have to say it's like late 90s, early 2000s. Other gangs started bleeding into the system. As guys get arrested and guys get convicted and come to prison, that was really when real wholesale gangland, I guess, began. Before that, you had certain crews that would commit crimes on the street as a group and get arrested and get locked up. It was never a thing where once they hit the prison system, they didn't germinate. You know what I mean? They didn't recruit. They didn't grow. And then, man, I hate to put it on a movie, but I remember when Colors came out. Remember the movie Colors? Right?
Yes, sir.
When that came out and was in the system and guys were seeing it, and I guess it wasn't just that it happened in the system, because, I can only speak from the point of view that I had, which was prison, but I'm sure that was what popularized the theme out here on the street. And that became, the street is always the feeder system for prison. It's not the other way around. And that's the crazy part, is because a high profile crime is committed out here in the street, and they change prison policy about it. Like, hey, nobody in here had the gun. Nobody in here in prison, I say in here, nobody in prison committed the crime. It was committed on the street, but then they changed prison based on that.
Right, I got you.
Yeah, when the streets is really the feeder system that changes prison. It's not the other way around.
Right.
Yeah, hell, look at the numbers. 50,000 new guys go to Florida prison every year from the county jails.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
50,000 guys ain't always getting out,
Right.
And if they are, they're getting out, in drips and drams. They're not just in mass, not being released.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And being that you went to prison in '88, man, when you got there, did you have to were you expected to hang out with your race? Or did you mingle with other races? Did you talk to other races?
Of course. Well, because, I'm from South Florida. You know what I mean? So, and I know you're located close to me.
Right.
I don't know if did you grow up over there? Is that where you're from?
Yeah, I've been here since '94. I moved from New York. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know how New York, I used to go to New York every summer. My people had a spot in Queens.
Okay.
Right off of Queens Boulevard and the BQE. And, down here, it was different, and the thing is, like, when you got to prison, there were certain dudes, and they would try to have their fears and their anxieties dictate what happens around them. You know what I'm saying? Because I think anybody who draws a line and says one kind of person on this side, one kind of person on that side, that's just a product of fear and stupidity.
Right.
So that's just my personal thing. That's how I've been my whole life. Racism, I believe, is something that is taught. It's not there. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not like a spider that's born knowing how to make a web. People are not born hating. People are not born fearing.
That's right.
It's something that's learned. So yeah, when I got to prison, it was a culture shock for some of the dudes that I hung out with, that they would see me talking to this guy or talking to that guy, because, the guys I knew were the guys I knew. Friends of mine were friends of mine,
Right.
So yeah, there were issues. And the truth is, there were more issues with the white guys that I would associate with, because they would see me associating with non-whites, with blacks and Spanish guys, than there were with the blacks and the Spanish guys. And I hate to have to say, black guy, but for the purpose of the conversation, to keep it in context, because to me, it's just this guy or that guy.
Right.
You don't have to have a qualifier, because I really believe anytime you do put a qualifier on it, that it's separatist. Anytime you have to say black woman, anytime you have to say black man or white woman or white man, and just, because look, one of my favorite examples is Denzel Washington. If somebody said Denzel Washington is a great black actor, does that mean he's not a great actor?
Right. Got you.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
That diminishes it because he's a great actor, period.
That's a fact.
You know, so I mean, but for the context of this conversation, you know, I say that just to make it clear for the viewers,
right,
that there was more of a problem because, you know, some of the white guys that had, when I got to prison, you know, the guys I hung out with had a bunch of time and had done a bunch of time, you know, because I had a bunch of time.
Right.
So there were guys that had been in prison since the 70s. I actually knew and spoke to both a white guy and a black guy that were in prison when it was integrated. See, back in the days, Belgrade was the black prison and the Rock, UCI, was the white prison. And I knew dudes that were at both spots when they mixed them. When they grabbed up the black guys from the muck, Belgrade, and put them on buses and sent them to the Rock, and when they grabbed up dudes at the Rock and put them on buses and sent them to the muck. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
So, yeah, they were like that. They were talking about that shit like it was crazy, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, so there were some issues dudes had. You know, there were some issues, but hey, then them are their issues. You know, they'll get over it or not. You know,
that's a fact. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's a long time, man. 31 years. So I'm going to ask you, in them 31 years in the Florida Department of Corrections, have you ever been involved in any riots? Have there been any riots?
Yeah, I've seen my share. I've seen enough of them to know that whatever gratification we, the inmates, got in the first half was absolutely erased with the retribution from the staff in the second half.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Explain that.
Well, I've seen, you know, where we as a group would pop off and officers would bear the brunt of it, you know, get beat up, get hurt, you know, and they were usually the dickheads. Every now and then, well, I won't say every now and then, but most times a good guy got it too, because there were some good officers that never fuck with anybody, and they would get it too, you know. And but then when they bring them doom squads in from them other camps, man, and they just go around kicking ass, they always got theirs back. You know, they always cleared the debt. That's what I'll say.
Okay, and back in that time in the 80s and stuff, in the early 90s in Florida, during that time, was it more like fist fighting, or was people actually stabbing people back then also? Locks and socks, all that was going on then?
There was like a scale. You know, you didn't just stab somebody. Well, certain dudes did. Now, there were some dudes that were fucked up, but most guys, you wouldn't stab somebody if they sat on the end of your bed talking to somebody, or if they sat on your footlocker. You know, you'd say, hey, man, don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Right. Now, your serious issues came about when one person would try to tell another man what to do. You know, like, don't do this, don't do that. You know, I don't want to see you do this and this no more. Well, now you're talking to me like I'm your property. Now you're talking to me like you tell me what to do, like you run me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that would lead to something serious. Now, obviously, money, because there was drugs. So if there was money involved, you know, there I've seen some stabbings about some money. Obviously, when somebody gets told on, you know, so the level of retaliation usually was dictated by the severity of the disrespect or transgression. You know, like I say, if somebody bucked you for $500, you know, that somebody was fixing to get it.
Right.
If the dude bucked you for $5, well, you know, you're not really gonna stab somebody for $5.
Right.
Unless he makes an issue of it, you know.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And what kind of inmate were you when you went in? Was you a model inmate? Was you a knucklehead? Was you getting in trouble?
No, man. I was in everything but a hearse, damn near. You know, I mean, I was messing with dope and this and that. And then as I got older and got bigger, obviously, my reach and the things that I got involved with became more significant, you know, but yeah, you know, I mean, but see, back then, the guys that had a name, the guys that had a reputation were guys that were hustlers. You know what I'm saying? They were guys that were known for making money, and, you know, you weren't just going to do them any old kind of way, you know? So those were the dudes I hung out with. So those were the guys that influenced me. You know what I'm saying? Those were the dudes, like, I mean, those were the dudes that you hung out with, and in prison, you know, you kind of like are your association, because if you hang out with a guy and he does something to somebody, you know, the retaliation is going to affect you too. I mean, just think about it. You know, if you and I are partners and I break into somebody's locker and they see you before they see me, they're going to say, man, these dudes eat out the same bowl every night. You know, when dude stole my radio and sold it, this guy probably ate some of the money.
Right.
You know, and then they're going to say, well, if we go ahead and jump on him, then this guy. So if they see you first, they just go ahead and try to give it to you. You know what I mean? They try to retaliate on you first. So you had to be real careful. You know, that's why pieces of crap, you know, low life guys, slimy guys who steal and tell on folks, they kind of associated with people that were like that, because if you were not into that, you weren't going to befriend this guy, because you weren't going to get involved in all that bullshit that you know is coming.
Right. Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Okay. How many institutions have you been to in those 31 years?
Alrighty. I got to Henry in January of 89. I went to Charlotte November 92. I went to Belgrade in April 94. Sumter in February 96. Jefferson in April of 2002. Okeechobee in October of 2002. Taylor in July of 2008. Madison in January 2009. Back to Charlotte July of 2013. Back to Madison November of 2014. And then to Washington in November of 2016. And then I left there in January of 17. I spent a week in the Leon County Jail and then did the rest of the time in Broward until I was released.
Wow. And out of all of those institutions you mentioned, which one would you say was the worst one? The most violent one you've been to out of all of those institutions?
The most violent that I've been to was, I had to be Charlotte from 92 to 94.
Okay,
yeah, that had to be the spot. Yeah.
Okay, and have you been to Lake Butler for reception?
Oh, sure. Listen, I went through Lake Butler. I went to every reception center. I was at South Florida in December 88, January 89. Went back through South Florida in 94. Went through CFRC in 96. Lake Butler and CFRC in South Florida again in 02. Went through South Florida and Lake Butler again in 08.
Wow.
And then Lake Butler again. Well, no, it wasn't Lake Butler. Then it went through Columbia Annex was the transit spot then in 08. And then Columbia Annex was the transit spot in 09. And then Lake Butler again. I was there on a medical hold in 2011 when I had surgery on my eyes, which they fucked up. Yeah, and then I was there again when I had knee surgery, which actually went pretty well. That was in 2012 and January and February of 13. And then I went through Lake Butler and South Florida again in 13 and in 14. So yeah, I've been through Lake Butler quite a bit. I saw some shit up at Lake Butler that was like out of some movie from back in the 50s.
Can you tell one of the stories from Lake Butler?
And all right. At Lake Butler, whenever a bus comes in from the county jail, somebody is fixing to get the goddamn shit slapped out of them. It's fixing to happen. And you know, I'm up there. They were dropping me off, so I'm up in TNR, the transferring and receiving, right?
Okay.
Like it's this big ass building. So I'm up there hanging out, and they say, you know, Duval County's coming. So the cops get all hyped up like they're in the tunnel before a football game. And they run out there and you hear them yelling, you know, everybody's yelling something different. It's pure chaos. You know, one guy, put your property down. Another guy, hold your property. Another guy, do this, do that. You know, so these poor inmates are out there, man. They don't know whether to shit or get off the pot. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then you'll hear one of them, you hear a cop say, didn't you hear? Didn't you? And then, kapow! And then it gets real quiet.
Damn.
You know, yeah, and the dudes come in and they're standing in line and you see one guy, man, with the big ass fucking handprint, his face all swollen, you know, and you're like, damn, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you can go through Lake Butler right now, and in the walls, right in the walls of the main unit, I block, which used to be like the main everything back in the days. Downstairs was the canteen, classification, psychology, dental. Now it's all different stuff. And upstairs was K-Wing, which was confinement, where a lot of inmates got killed.
Oh, for real? K-Wing?
Yeah, K-Wing. Now it's called I block. But it's like now it's kind of sort of like open pop, but if you're high security and you can't live in the open bay, you live up there. It's like a cell block. It's like confinement, but they open the cells and let you roam around sometimes. Not so very often.
So you said K-Wing is where a lot of inmates got killed. Was that where the psych inmates went? Why was there a lot of violence in K-Wing?
K-Wing was lockdown back in the days. It was confinement. I'm talking about old school bars in the front, toilet in the back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And windows busted out. Even to this day, you could take some crackers or bread and put it in your room, and birds are going to fly through the busted window, fly through the bars, get the bread, get back in the bars, and fly out.
Wow.
So, yeah. And that was where the cops used to do their dirt. You know, I mean, back in the days, dog, when you went through Lake Butler, if you gave them a problem, they were going to swallow your asshole like a boa constrictor. Yeah, they were going to go up there to K-Wing, and they were just going to change shifts on you, man. They were going to pound you. And they had some cops up there, you know what I'm saying, famous for being fucked up. I mean, famous for being fucked up.
Have you ever heard of Kwingslim and niggacharlie?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Man, listen, I saw the jar full of teeth and everything, man. And see, and the thing is, back then, okay, now look, you know, there's guys that are always going to have the inmate perspective, and there's guys that are always going to have the cop perspective. I've seen inmates sit around with cops talking about some they when they're talking about other inmates, like this inmate, you know, ain't part of the inmate population. All he's saying is they're stupid. They doing this. Look how dumb they are. You know what I mean? Like they're not wearing blues. And then, you know, you got guys who can look at it from the big picture, right? And back in the days, the cops had no badges. They had no gas. They had no cuffs. Most of them didn't have a radio. And the ones that did have a radio, it didn't work. They used it to beat inmates with, you know, because they couldn't call for help.
Right.
And their only weapon really was fear, you know? And you're only going to get sincere fear from the threat of violence. That is the universal language. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's not money, it's not love, but knowing that you could get fucked up will keep somebody in line, you know?
That's
and
a
them
fact.
cops, and them cops up now. Nowadays it's different. Nowadays, you know, you put your hands on a cop, it could be 15 years. But back in those days, you know, cops were getting dish ragged, cops were getting pounded, you know?
Wow.
And see, you could be in a riot at this camp and be put on a bus and just taken to another camp. They didn't have a bunch of CM beds like they do now.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if it was inmates against inmates, chances are you wouldn't do more than 30, 40 days in the box. You know? But now if you beat up an officer or two, now it's going to be kind of serious. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Well, nowadays, you know, these cops, they have badges. They're certified law enforcement. So you put your hands on them, you know, you're going to get some time. And the cops know that. So you have some cops that are pretty much bullies now because they know that you can't put your hands on them without paying the price. And they will press charges. And they'll tell you. They'll push you around and they'll tell you, you know, if you swing on me, I'm going to put your ass in the box and I'm going to send you to the county jail. Where back in the days, them cops had to have some heart. And they had to be truly evil. They had to be truly fucked up because that was how they got their respect, knowing this dude was going to fuck you up.
Gotcha.
You know, that's how. So you had these cops and listen, man, you know, there's a lot of negative energy, a lot of negative connotations that go with words, you know, and certain words are just ugly, you know?
Right.
So I refuse to use certain words because not only would it, I mean, look, you disrespect somebody, you also disrespect the people who give a damn about you. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I would never just come out and use some of these words lightly. But there are certain times and there are certain instances where the words, you know, have to be spoken because a dude has to know how serious it is.
Right.
And I'll say this, niggacharlie was just that.
For real? Speak on it. Yes, sir.
He was fucked up. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And he chose to call himself that. That's not a label somebody else put on him. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And he wore that shit like a bulletproof vest.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? He would tell you, I'm niggacharlie. I'm the motherfucker you heard about.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And they would walk through when dudes came and they would look for black guys from Dade County off rip.
Why black guys from Dade County? Oh, okay.
You know, they were profiling.
Right.
They were profiling. You know, so when you come through on the bus, they'll call you. So-and-so, so-and-so, because they already done set them to the side, the files. And when them dudes come up there, dog, don't fuck around and smile. If you got some goals in your mouth, don't fuck around and smile, because it's going down. So, you know, them dudes would be up there looking down, yes, sir, no, sir. Niggacharlie's just laughing his ass off, because he knows, you know what I'm saying, this is what he wants. You know, this is what he thrives on. Kwingslim was the same fucking way.
Wow.
You know? They were like partners in crime.
Right. That's crazy.
And dog, listen, back in those days, most of, really all of the medical treatment that we got was from Lake Butler. And there were dudes, me personally, me myself, I refused to get my wisdom teeth cut out because they said, you got to go to Lake Butler to get your wisdom teeth cut out. Man, I wasn't trying to go up around that fucking place. Fuck that. I'm like, do they got to come out? No, they're going to grow in. It's going to hurt. All right, well, I'll deal with that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
man. You saw dudes running around in prison with fingers all bent up because they didn't want to go to Lake Butler to get it fished, because it was messed up, man. Yeah, it was messed up. Lake Butler was a terrible spot.
Wow.
Yeah, especially if you were from down here, because anybody from down here got profiled. You know what I mean? Yeah,
right. Man, it's one more name I'm gonna ask you about that I've heard. I don't know if you met him or if you heard the name when you got there. Was Mama Hurt a name you heard a lot while you was locked up?
Yeah. Okay, but I never saw Mama Hurt, right? I guess you could say I saw the other side of the coin. I was there with a dude named King Saul, right? Okay. But I never was there with Mama Hurt. Mama Hurt was a chain gang legend. Everybody talked about him. You know what I'm saying?
Who was King Saul?
King Saul was this dude, man. King Saul, he was one of them dudes, he should have been a porn star, right? He was a guy that when he got in the shower, everybody got out.
Okay.
Everybody, because he's had some shit hanging off him like this. Right? And listen, man, they used to haze cops with King Saul coming out the chow hall. They'd have the new cops out in front of the chow hall, and they'd say, that motherfucker looks like he's stealing something. Go pat him down. So the cop would have King Saul and be like, and he'd say, what's that? And King Saul would be up like this. He'd talk about something, that's me, boss. That's me. You know what I mean? And they're grabbing it, you know, they're grabbing his leg like, what is that? Hey. What the hell is that? And the cops are all laughing, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I never saw Mama Hurt though.
Okay. Oh yeah. So speaking of Mama Hurt, he was a chain gang legend, a booty band or whatever. Do you remember the first time you actually seen inmates engaging in homosexual activity?
Man, listen. The first time I saw it, okay, I'm in an open bay dorm. I've been in prison probably about 2 or 3 days, maybe. And the open bay dorms at that time, the perimeter up against the wall was all double bunks, and the middle was single bunks.
Okay.
So, you know, it's 3 sides, basically, you know, double rack, double rack, double rack. And in the middle, it's all single beds.
Okay.
So I'm sitting up in my double rack. You know, I'm in the top bunk because, you know, they used to give all the young guys top bunks. So I'm in the top bunk. I'm reading the newspaper. And I'm like, over here, you see some activity. Lights are on. It's like 7:30 at night, you know, in the wintertime. And, you know, it's January. And I see something. So I look, and there's a dude fucking a dude in the single bunk. Right out there in the middle of the dorm. And nobody's looking. And I'm like, the fuck is this? And the dude next to me says, Jit, don't be looking at that shit, man.
He said what?
Hey, Jit, don't look at that. Yeah, so you know what happened? The newspaper went right back up. And you know, I put the shield up. God damn, man, what the fuck going on? You know what I mean? This shit is crazy.
That's great. Don't be looking at that.
Man said, don't be looking at that. Don't be watching that. Because, you know, you don't even know what, you don't even realize you're looking. You're like, hold on a minute. Are they doing, damn it, they are. Get on. Get what you doing? You know?
Oh,
yeah, that
man,
shit was
Rob,
crazy.
that's funny. That's funny. So,
that shit was crazy.
So check this out, okay? Just to go back on the corruption, with all that corruption and stuff we spoke about and you've seen, have you ever been beat up by the police, by the guards?
Yeah, you know, I'd have been mishandled a couple times. I'd have mishandled a few of them a couple times.
Okay.
You know, yeah, I mean, that was really just because back in the days, there was an expectation with the cops, right? Somebody was going to sell drugs. Somebody was going to run a poker game. Somebody was going to run a ticket. Somebody was going to sell wine. You know, somebody was going to do all this shit, and they knew they were not going to just stamp out crime at all.
Right, okay.
So as long as you were not making it an issue, as long as people weren't getting beaten in the head about not paying for their wine, as long as there was not any problems that came from it, they would leave you alone. You know? Now, there were times when, you know, the cops would get the snitch note saying so-and-so's got some dope, or so-and-so's doing this, or so-and-so's doing that. And they would come and question you. And, you know, at that time, you're supposed to be able to say, well, look, man, I'm making some money here. Let me just suck it up. Yes, sir. No, sir. But when you're young, sir is like, you just can't say it.
Right.
So they'd be like, hey, such and such, no, sergeant. They look at you. Oh, you can't call me sir? Sergeant, I don't have to call you sir. And then there's problems. So yeah, you know, I'd get boxed around a little bit here and there, and I'd, you know, get off on them a little bit. You know, they're never going to let you win, because they're never going to fight you one-on-one. You know, even if they are fighting with you one-on-one, there's somebody there to grab you if you end up getting the best of them, you know. But there were some cops back in the days that would take the shirt off and would bump with you. But those were the ones, but those were the ones that usually never gave you any problems anyway, because they were men. You know, it was the bullies that would always give you problems. A dude who knew that he would take that shirt off and bump with you one-on-one wasn't going to give you any problems, because, you know, you don't want that type of shit.
Right.
Yeah, but it's the ones that knew that they had their friends with them that would always push the issue. You know.
And these 31 years you spent in prison, what do you prefer, open dorm or being in a cell?
It really depends. Nowadays, man, you almost want to be in an open bay, because you spend so much time on lockdown. At least in an open bay, you can kind of move around. You know what I'm saying? You can mingle a little bit. Where, I mean, being in a two-man room, it really all depends on your roommate. Your roommate is 99% of your time.
Okay.
Because if you're going to be locked in there with a dude you don't get along with, shit's going to be tough. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
and we're getting ready to close here, but in those 31 years, man, did you have a lot of support, visits, and letters? Did you have a lot of support?
Yeah. When I was close to home, you know, I would get a lot of visits. And then, you know how it is, well, maybe you don't. When you get in trouble, they have panhandle justice. If you're from down here, they send you to the panhandle to make it hard on you. So let's see. I did, I would say that of the 31 years I was down, I did from 89 to 92, 4 years, and then another 2 years, 6 years. And then I did 12 years within 200 miles of home. Okay. I did the other 19 far away from home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, and being 31, you being in prison for that long, man, did it ever come to a point in your sentence where your dreams were only about prison, or did you still dream about outside the world?
No. Okay, it was like this. First thing, let me say, I went to prison when I was young. So I never really accomplished much on the street. Anything that you could say, I did more of in prison than at home. I sold more drugs in prison than I ever did at home.
Okay.
I had more girlfriends in prison than I ever did at home. I played more sports in prison than I ever did at home. I mean, I was in prison for a long, long time.
Right.
And one thing that I never developed was that split personality or split identity where I would say to you, oh man, on the street, I used to do this. On the street, I did that. You know how these dudes, they try to talk to the cop and that little crackerjack Mac game don't work. And then they'll be like, oh, if that bitch saw me on the street, blah, 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 blah. Well, I never had that because the me I had in prison was really the only me I ever had.
Gotcha.
So, so I never really had that, that break. And, one of my bosses said it the best. He said, keeping me locked up wasn't the same as for everybody else because it wasn't really punishment in the sense that prison was really all I ever did.
Got you.
So a day in prison didn't bother me as much, say, as a guy who had a house, a guy who had this job or that job, because he would be able to sit back and say, oh man, if I was home right now, I'd be doing this or I'd be doing that. And for me, it was, damn, if I was home right now, I'd have to be skipping school or something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, the reason I got my GED in the county jail, funny story, was because the cops came in and said they changed the law where if you were under 18 and didn't have your GED, you had to go to school when you got to prison. So I'm thinking, I said, man, I didn't like going to school on the street. I damn sure ain't gonna like going to school in prison. Let me take this GED. Let me get this shit out the way, So I took the GED.
Okay.
So yeah,
And being that you was in there that long, like you said, you went in so young, so you couldn't really compare stuff like other inmates was comparing, like, oh, my job or my kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So with that being said, though, when the law had changed and you found out you was coming home, was you nervous about the civilian world?
No. Okay. No. Because the truth is, there's a lot of guys, like I say, that much like politics, you know how you have certain guys that are in the Republican gang, and by that I mean they follow like the Republican, they're just followers. So they follow the Republican gang mentality. Same thing with the Democrats, to the point where Republicans deny global warming. I mean, listen, for everybody watching, and I've said this on a different channel before and got some negative responses from the comment section. Look, I do not have to be a scientist to tell you that I lived without air conditioning for 31 years in the state of Florida. And I'm here to tell you that it is a whole hell of a lot hotter now than it was back then.
Okay.
So while there's a lot of people out here, you're not a scientist, you shouldn't talk about things you don't know. Listen, I don't have to be an astronaut to point at the moon.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And I lived without air conditioning for 30 years, and I'm here to tell you it is hotter than a motherfucker. It's hot.
Right.
So but what I was saying is, in prison you do learn how to cope. Now, some guys develop really fucked up coping mechanisms, and other guys, develop different ones. And you go through a stage. Everybody doesn't, but when you're there long enough, you go through a stage where you realize, man, that the world needs order. We need rules. We need rules, because without rules, it's just chaos. And when we're young, chaos is cool, because chaos means you can't tell me what to do. But when we're older, we realize chaos means we can't tell them other 1,000 motherfuckers what to do either.
Right.
So
yes, sir.
The thing is, a sane person reaches a point where they know that if you commit crimes, you get caught, you go to prison. May not happen right away. May not happen, as fast as the cops would like or as slow as the criminals would like. And there are certain criminals who suffer this fatal flaw of thinking that as a criminal, you have to make a mistake to go to prison. You have to make a mistake to get caught. When the truth is, there's some pretty smart cops out there. You know what I'm saying? And there are some cops that you can do everything right. And these cops are going to figure out what happened, you know? And bigger than that, these cops have every resource. So when I was young, crime was like a thrill. You know, doing something wrong was like an adrenaline rush. Well, first things first, there ain't nothing fun about being locked up. So nowadays, the thrill is being able to sit in my house and watch a TV when I want to. You know what I'm saying? Being able to watch a movie the whole way through. You know, I never got to watch Independence Day in the joint without having to stop for count. That's a long ass movie, man. You know, I never got to see Independence Day the whole way through. Never.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's
never.
funny. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. But now, and the truth is, dog, I watched so much TV when I first got out. Now it takes me a week to watch a movie on Netflix or on Hulu, you know, or on Disney Plus, because now I don't have the time, and the thrill is just not there like that. But what is fun is knowing that if it's up to me, I'm going to be here tomorrow. You know, and when you're committing crimes, when you're living on the edge, when you're making that kind of fast money or whatever it is, we fool ourselves into thinking that we have control of where we are. When the truth is we don't, because all it takes is to get caught. And tomorrow, you're not going to be here. Tomorrow, your ass is going to be locked up. And I mean, there is a problem, especially in the state of Florida, with proportionality in sentencing. And I don't know if you want to get into that, but there's a lot of guys I know, man. Look, there's a lot of good dudes I know in prison with homicide cases. And whenever I speak about them on other channels, you know, I get the backlash of, oh, what about the victim? And listen, I understand there's a victim in every homicide. Anybody who denies that is just an asshole.
Right.
I know guys that are in prison for life without bodies. You know, there's a friend of mine, James Fulton. His name is Pep. Pep's got a natural life sentence, man, for selling dope to an undercover cop.
Damn.
Never killed anybody. Look him up. James Fulton. Look him up.
Okay.
Life sentence, man, for selling dope to an undercover cop.
Wow.
Never hurt anybody. Wouldn't hurt anybody. Man, Pep, let me tell you something. Pep may not know CPR, but he tried to save a motherfucker's life if he could.
I got you.
And he's in prison forever, dog. In prison forever for selling. Now, true enough, you know, it's one of them situations where he got locked up for selling dope. He got 5 years. He got locked up for selling dope again. He got 5 years. He got locked up for selling dope again, got life. You know, so did he make some dumb decisions? Yeah. Does he deserve to die in prison? No.
Right.
You know, so there's situations like that. And, you know, everybody knows there's a saying that when you stay in a place, you know, your circle there, your area grows where you are. And when you move, you know, the area where you were, it shrinks, and the area where you are, it grows. So I was in prison for a long time. So naturally, I know a lot of guys in prison. And for people out here watching, you know, if you remember guys from high school, if you remember guys from college, just think you were only there for 4 years. You were only in the other spot for 4 years or 6 years, but you still have friendships that you developed from those times.
Right.
Well, I was in prison for 30 years.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I've got friends, dudes that I care about, I've got dudes I know, dudes I care about, dudes I love, dudes like my family, you know what I'm saying? And they're in prison fucked up. And yes, I realize that a lot of these guys have victims. The truth is, I never got a chance to know the victims in their crimes. Gotcha. Do I know that they have homicides? Yes. Do I wish they would have never killed anybody? Sure. Do they wish they would have never killed anybody? Of course. But there comes a point where, as people, we need to try to know these dudes beyond the label of being a monster. You know,
that's a fact, sir.
It's okay to say this guy committed a crime and he is still a person. You know, it's okay to do that. And, you know, there's a lot of people that really lack the confidence to form their own opinion. And that's on both sides. You got some people that I would never want to be seen as someone who accepts a person who killed somebody. You know, even though, I mean, I had people while I was locked up, I had cops that would be offended that I had a murder charge, mad at me that I killed somebody that they never knew, but they would create this artificial anger because you killed somebody. You know, I really can't get all that invested in someone who kills somebody I don't even know. I mean, I can say it's wrong. I know that it's wrong. I can say that it's bad. I can understand that there's suffering and that there's pain involved and hurt and loss. However, for me to just make myself angry about everybody who commits a crime is ridiculous. When would I ever have time to do anything else?
That's
I couldn't even, I mean, like I said, it takes me 4 days to watch. I'm still watching Infinity War with Avengers, and I've been trying to watch that for the last, I mean, I watched all the other Avengers movies. I'm on that one now, and it's taking me forever. I just can't find the time, you know? But if I was angry, if I was making myself mad about all these other crimes that people commit, I mean, and the hypocrisy of it is you can get mad. There are people out there that will make themselves angry and justify it in their own mind about a crime, an abstract, a crime that they didn't see happen, that they never knew factually was committed. And then they watch this bullshit from Washington on the news and know what's going on and don't even get upset about it. And that's ridiculous. You know, that's ridiculous. Sir. Because for me, the worst thing that happened in Washington was for all that talk, for all this BS about how things are supposed to be changing and people are supposed to be treated equal, they let these motherfuckers do whatever they wanted to do because they were white.
Thank you. That's a fact. That's a fact, Rob.
Fact.
Keep on talking.
It's a fact. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And that and like they say, man, the truth is seldom spoken and it's always shown.
Yes,
so
sir.
They can talk that shit about how everything is supposed to be better and how things are supposed to be changing. But then when push comes to shove, we all know that if that would have been a Black Lives Matter protest, there would have been much more harsh treatment.
Yes, sir. What up?
Protesters, because those guys were not protesters. To call them protesters is disrespectful to the people who do protest.
That's a fact.
Then that shit was terrorism. You know? I mean, because look, protesting is done with deeds and with words. Terrorism is formulated on violence.
Yes, sir.
That's where the terror comes from the fear of violence. What them dudes did was an act of violence. That wasn't a protest.
Sir. Yes, sir.
You know?
Yep.
And if it would have been any other demographic besides a bunch of dumbass white people, the cops would have been popping caps. And by that, I'm talking about shooting.
Yes, sir.
You know, and that's obvious. So
yes, sir.
to me, that's the biggest stain. It's not what them shit-eating bastards did running into the Capitol. It's what the authorities didn't do by allowing it. Because that's just saying that they were cool with it.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Damn, that was awesome, Rob. We're gonna close here.
All right.
Real quick, what do you got going on right now? You look like you're really big, man, in shape. Like you.
Well, I mean, when I was in prison, I worked rec.
Okay.
Taught fitness classes. I ran sports. I was the commissioner. You know, I say I, but it's always a team. You know, it was always me and a group of guys in the rec building. You know, we would make sure that there were games and sports and stuff like that. And I ran the fitness programs. I became a certified personal trainer first in 1997.
Wow.
And in prison. And I worked as a fitness clerk, a fitness aide. And when I got out, you know, here, just a little brief thing. In 2005, the first case that came out with juvenile reform as a theme was Roper versus Simmons. It was about juvenile death penalty cases.
Okay.
And there were a few of us that forward seeing enough knew that there would be other reform that spiraled off of that, because what happened was they took what was the worst penalty and dropped it down one. So now eventually all the other penalties would have to drop down one too, because you can't just drop the ceiling and not drop the floor.
That's right.
So in 2010 and 11 came Graham versus Florida, because in 2005, the Supreme Court said that a natural life sentence is the death penalty for a juvenile. Well, now you had all these juveniles that had natural life sentences for non-homicide saying, how can you give me the juvenile death penalty when I didn't kill anybody? So they dropped them down, right? And then came Miller versus Alabama, which talked about the automatic life sentences for juvenile homicide offenders, which came from Roper. Roper versus Simmons made it where there was no death penalty. So now if you got found guilty of murder, you automatically got life from 2005 on. So Miller came and said, listen, this is wrong. You can't just give us automatic life sentences. So because Florida's parole system is so fucked up, and I could spend forever talking about that. The court originally said that we with parole eligible life sentences actually did have a natural life sentence because we had no meaningful chance to get out. So they grouped us in with the Miller guys for a short time, and now they snatched it back. So there's a lot of guys that were in the county jail waiting to get resentenced, and because the process took too long, they just get sent back to prison now. Too bad. You should have done it when you had a chance. Yeah, it's bad. I did a video on my channel on Listless Genius TV called I Remember. It's about my friend Michael Glover. He actually got his resentencing granted before mine. And because his took so long, he's still in prison with life, and I'm sitting out here now.
Wow,
you know?
Man.
Yeah.
I'll send you the link.
I'll send you the link to it when we get off. But
let the people know your information real quick, your social media stuff.
Yeah, I'm involved on two different social media, two different YouTube channels. One is Chop It Up with two other guys that were juvenile offenders like me, got out, had life sentences, a guy, Urbano Rebus and Barry Stevens. And we are joined by a friend of mine, Michelle Fortier, who used to work in prison as a mental health specialist. And our channel is called Chop It Up. And then I have my own channel that I haven't really been on lately because I've been so busy working, which is Listless Genius TV. And that's just me talking shit about, most times I'm just talking shit about stuff. Every now and then I get kind of serious. And I'm, like I said, I'm working, when we all got together saying, man, this shit was going to change. Some of my friends took CDL classes. Some of my friends took wastewater treatment classes. I said, well, damn, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and I'll get out and be a personal trainer. So when I got out, that was what I started doing. And then here comes COVID. And COVID, man, bam, the whole industry, because, if people are not making money, they can't spend it.
That's right.
All of I do private, one-on-one lessons and stuff, one-on-one sessions. And, my clients were business owners. Well, the businesses themselves were being hampered from making money by the COVID restrictions, and that shit ran uphill. So when the owners stopped making money, they stopped spending it. And the first thing they stopped spending it on is the guy showing them how to do push-ups the right way. So,
right.
But it's starting to rebound a little bit, but I got to hustle. I do a lot of driving. I go from here to there. And some days I go from Lake Worth to Hollywood to Biscayne to South Miami. Last Friday I did 203 miles, but I had 5 clients. So I made, close to $200. So
that's good, man.
Yeah. So
last question I'm going to have to ask you, man, before we close. The last question is, was it hard for you to adjust back to the civilian world coming out of prison, or did you get right back into it? Well, did you have a problem out here with people, with the disrespect, with the people not saying excuse me and stuff?
All right. The 3 things that I had a problem with, one of them was actually seasonal, because I got out December 7th, the height of Christmas shopping season. People were just running over people in the stores. I'm there trying to shop for deodorant and toothpaste and stuff, and these people are just buck wild and they're running into me, and that was tough. Bumping into me was kind of hard because, that's physical contact is still something that's difficult. And the other 2 things are kind of almost humorous. I couldn't sleep. When I first got out, I could not sleep. Wow. More than 2 hours, and I was not tired. I just could not sleep. And I went through a phase where I got a lot of pillows and piled them on the bed around me, and then I could sleep a little bit. Now I don't need the pillows anymore. But still, every 4 or 5 days, and last night was one of them, I sleep so restless. I'll wake up, I done tossed and turned and snatched the sheet off the bed and all kinds of crazy shit. And the other thing that was tough for me when I got out was different color clothes. It was hard. I wasn't comfortable wearing yellow shirts. I wasn't comfortable wearing blue shirts and red shirts and green shirts because I felt like wearing a t-shirt all the time. You know, I went and bought a whole bunch of white t-shirts, and I wore white t-shirts and wore white t-shirts. And then one day I just said, man, you know what? I said, fuck it. And now every day I wear a different color shirt. Okay. But I made it like that was part of my uniform, you know, wear a different color shirt. Fuck it. Yeah. And that's what I started doing.
Wow, that's awesome. Hey, you heard it right here on Florida Prison Talk. I'm a man, Mr. Robert LeFleur. I appreciate you. This interview was fire. You gave me way more than I expected. I really appreciate this, man. I appreciate y'all tuning in to another episode of Florida Prison Talk. I'm going to pin his social media content in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button, man. It's easy win. Robert, Florida Prison Talk. We out of here.
Yep. Bye-bye.